Hello, it is me. Sis. Welcome to episode 11 of TGBDSM Podcast. We're still getting on the path to interviewing other people. My good friend Illy took a little crash course with me a while ago, and so it might be time for us to do a little retry. We did a whole like 2 hour interview, and it was like there's emotional parts. It was so good. Honestly, it was a better way for us to like get to know each other. And then I can't blame myself. I mean, I was recording an MKV. I was recording MP4, and it didn't save the recording. So actually, it saved first screen and no audio. So whatever. Great start to the podcast. Are you going to do another retake? I'm just kidding. I haven't done a retake. I've just been sitting here for like close to an hour being like, when are you going to start the show? It has been 8 months since I've done an update, and I know it had been a bit. It's always a bit. But I think I was a little shocked to realize just how long. And then I started to watch it a little bit. I started to get agitated. I was like, oh my God, this girl. It just highlights how different I am now versus that last version of me. And I have a lot of updates. There's a lot of stuff that's happened. Um, okay, so where to start? Let's see. So last we had left off, I had just played with Dart Tech, and I was we were navigating my aftercare. He did amazing job. We've been dating since, which is wild. Like, I mean, I'm so lucky. And I mean, whatever. Whatever. I mean, I put a ton of work into this relationship. It's been eye-opening in a lot of ways. A lot of the stuff I've had to navigate internally, and how incredible he's been in helping me navigate this stuff, and his patience and his understanding and his willingness to be with me is incredible. And I really do love him a lot. So quick note, we played, and I was recovering from our play when I made a long video, and I'm like perpetually recovering from his and I play, which is for me is good. This has had one notable effect of taking the sting out of my cravings. We've had 4 visits. We see each other maybe like every 3 or 4 months so far is kind of the rhythm we're trying to work out. But and we're always evolving in how we play and everything. But this has taken a lot of the urgency out of my head when it comes to like I don't know where to achieve these things I need. Like he understands me and sees me on a level that is like shocking and sometimes. And that's what I need, especially with those kink. And there's so many facets of our relationship. The kink stuff is honestly not even like the majorest parts. Like is like we play Minecraft together now. We have a little shared server. It's so cute. But like he is my dominant, but like he's my boyfriend, and honestly, like that feels. I mean, that's the more appropriate title. Like he's my dominant boyfriend. And actually, God, we used to struggle with those tags and all that. Like everyone, I had a meltdown over the question, like when you're submissive. Like, again, incredible patience. We have navigated a lot of relationship things. And a consistent theme in that relationship is every time we talk, I typically feel better. 100%. Like, yeah. And that's like, even my therapist, like whenever, like, there's a lot of crap going on, but like whenever I kind of bring stuff up with him, I remember one time she's like, Linzy, 19, not anymore. I'm not concerned about you and your boyfriend because every time you two talk, y'all end up just fine. And I was like, heard, like straight up, like um, So yeah, so we continued a relationship after we played. I stopped going to the city. I was already, too late. Like there was that guy I had a real big crush on. Um, in the city who I tied with, the most fun rope scene guy. I called him Rope Crush for a long time. That hurt grew and festered over time. It's still, I think there's still a part of me that's still a little hurt, and I don't know. Like there's a lot of, but not just because of that, but I mean there was two guys, right? The physical and the emotional guy, and the physical hurt guy, like poked at me here and there, but like I don't know, like there was never any connections I made that made me want to go back to the city, to Austin in particular. Like San Antonio, I went there for a couple of years, and I do have like at least one close friend that I can think of that I haven't seen since 8 months ago. When I had gone up there the last time, basically, and then I think about her a lot, and I got some snaps actually waiting for her right now. It's like and she's great. Like I tie myself up and we'll goof around, but like we're and that's something I try. I forgot to, and like, and having a lot of my submissive needs kind of like taken care of and checked off the box, and have, well, not necessarily checked off the box, but they have a home now. Like a lot of those submissive needs can go to a place, and I think that took some pressure off me and everything else in my life, and I wanted to more recognize some of these other things that are important to me that are like not kink related. I was fixated for a long time on a lot of the tie up, and again, I got, I'll get to the rope stuff, but, yeah. And so having boyfriend who I can talk to and he sees me, and I remember the first, I was aware of his presence online, but there was a video that he made years ago of him putting like somebody, so it was like a guy in a straight jacket, and he like puts him in this hole underneath a deck. It's like a deck with the door that opens out on the porch. This really nice house. It's like a hole they put him in, and then there's just cameras down there like film him, and he's like hooded and like straight jacketed. I remember I was doom scrolling late at night one night, and that was the thing that like I reached back out to him and was like, oh, hi, you know what I mean? Like, or I think I just commented on it. I was just like, oh, and then he DM'd me and was just like, when are we gonna play? And that's when I was like, I need too much aftercare. And honestly, like the kink journey was basically over right when I met him, because like, a year ago or 6 months ago, if he had been like, when we're we gonna play, I would have given a much different answer. It would have been more logistical, and the aftercare stuff would have come later. But I needed, I was like, I'm in no position. I'm at the end of my rope. I love the pun. Um, this is gonna be a very relaxed episode. This is gonna be a very confessional style episode. I don't know how long this is gonna go, but I got a lot to talk about, and I need to get it out. Um, I do, because I gotta get back to work. So you're gonna see me drink coffee and vaping and being noisy and gross and stuff. What else? Oh gosh. I wanted to spike the mic. So sorry to be able. I didn't mean to blow your face. Oh, I'll just cut that out. No, I won't. Let's not lie. Too much work. I'm too busy. But so we played and we navigated dating long distance. After that, and he aftercared me for 3 weeks. We agreed on 2 weeks. Gave me 3. But I mean, like, if I had really, again, if I had been a model, I would have approached it differently, but I already knew that was kind of over. And, like, I didn't even really know the guy or anything. I just was like, I already know what I need, and it's going to be a lot of attention after we play. And, producer going to really give me that, or they may, or, and I was hoping maybe we can negotiate a certain amount. I was like, does social media posting, if I can get him post pictures of me, that can count as aftercare. A little bit, so I was willing to maybe compromise a little bit, but not too much. But again, he approached me very differently, and he, told me, I mean, as we talked, like he has a little crush on me, and was like not really viewing me as a model in this case. And later, as we talked, like he would approach things much slower. Like we joke later is like, yeah, basically, you forced me to be in a relationship with you just to date you, just to play. I'm like, yeah, and so we basically entered this relationship and had to grow into it and fill it out, and I just I tend to love him more and more. It's like the more I see him deal with me, the more I see him approach me, how he learns from me and how to treat me, and then he'll take that forward and stuff. Like that has been really exciting to see that develop, and in seeing me develop in that relationship. Because I mean, have you seen the other episodes of this? Is mostly just like I haven't been in a relationship. I mean, that last one was kind of really bad. And I came into this thing with hangups, like heavy hangups, that we had to like work through over the months, and that took months again, like for several like landmines. I had several landmines, and some I wasn't even aware of until we're still stepping on landmines here and there. Um, but yeah, we're great. Like, yeah. Excuse me. We started dating, and my dad died. Like a month and a half, maybe not even. Which was wild in and of itself. And as far as the relationship went, I was like, oh, now I gotta like, hi, new boyfriend. And we were still trying to figure out like exactly where we stood. Like, we dumb stuff, like how, you're my daddy, but like how emotionally attached, like how much do I was like still trying to figure out where exactly everything stood. I chose to tell him, obviously, because like I knew I had to, but it was a lot for me, and I didn't really want to bring that on him, especially considering like everything else that was going on at the moment. But like, it would have affected me, and he would have obviously, been able to tell, and I just couldn't be evasive with him at all. So he died, and that was something I guess you could say like saw it coming. Like I don't, not really, like because he was hiding about things about his health, and he was in like way worse health than he was like letting on. He had tongue cancer for like 6 months, and he just didn't go to the dentist or anything, and get had it looked at for a long time until it just hurt him too bad. And so I happened to call him on a Saturday randomly, which like in and of itself, the whole story between my dad and I's relationship is a whole podcast episode. But like, he called him on a Saturday, and and he answered the phone. He was getting like an MRI or something, and like, um, yeah, he told me told me he would call me like tomorrow to like clue me in or like tell me more or something, and like. Then he told me, and he said they'd scheduled like an operation a few weeks from then. Um, and his wife had died like a year before, so it was it's one of those things where after she like I knew she took care of him in a lot of ways, like and I feel there's a lot of the same issues I feel like he and I kind of shared about like I feel like there's some AU in there and like some ADHD and like the instant I mean he was a fucking like lifelong alcoholic too, and it's like he was a pothead at the end more. Washington State, when we got legal, he was in the Navy for like fucking 30 years and shit, and like, not an easy relationship with my dad my entire life. My brother, he died a couple of years ago, through an overdose, and some of his last texts to his girlfriend were about like, you know, about her dad and shit. there was a lot of trauma done, and a lot of it kind of accounts for what I was discovering in BDSM and relationships. Like a lot of my reactions and things were, linked to some of that more than I think I was willing to admit. Or, yes, I have daddy issues apparently. Apparently, um, God, no, it was never easy between he and I, but um yeah, he told me, and it's like, you know, he wouldn't even give me like last phone call. Like, I know, whoa, so selfish, but I mean, there was a lot of shocks after he died about what he chose to do with his estate. Some other things that were like kind of a blow to me and the family. But like he was a weird dude. And I don't mean that necessarily in like a derogatory way. He just had a certain way, like he had a certain way of looking at the world, and money was such a like weird thing to him. He was so cagey about it, and like, um, and I think that put a lot of weirdness in me. Like boyfriend, notices weirdness with me and money and too, and like, yeah, I think I get a lot of that shit from him. Um, but he died. And it was basically he had his like buddy be the executor of the will. Told me I needed to come clean out the house. I needed to get up to Washington. I had no money. I didn't really, and I told the dude, I was like, I don't have to wake up there right now. I'm like, you're just gonna have to wait until I can, And I cleaned out the house. I had to, you know, drive back. The plan was to fly out there and drive back, because he had a car that I was gonna drive back. Um, just pack whatever I could in and come back. That was just kind of the idea. I couldn't figure out a way to make it work. Boyfriend and I had already had a second date planned, like a second visit where I was going to fly back out to him. And it then occurred to me, because he had mentioned he lives near, he's in Sacramento and he lives near an Amtrak station. And it occurred to me to just like skip that return flight and just hop on that train and go up there to Washington State and take another train in the mountains where he lived, and do that. Turn it into this big adventure, basically. That's what I did. So I planned a big adventure, and yeah, basically that's what happened. Is I did the second trip to see him, and I got on a midnight train. It was like a 12-hour train ride too. I remember like making a bunch of jokes about like being like, oh no, it's a midnight train. What if I like come out 100 years in the past or something? Like, what? You know what I mean? What if I come out in a different dimension? Like, what if I come out a different person? And in some ways, I knew I would. Like, in some way, in a lot of ways, it was like I knew it was going to be like this, and it was going to be jarring. It was going to be scary too, because I was going. My brother's gone, and like, I'm going up there by myself to confront the death of my dad, and like I said, in a lot of ways, and now after time has passed, I can, say that like, it's a relief. Nobody on this planet could make me feel as bad as that man, and like, I think me and my brother always felt deeply scared of him in some ways, of his judgment, of just his, the way he was. Like, he was so hard to read, and he would say things when he was drunk, and like um always on edge around him. And we, and it's like, and me more than anybody, and I think, nobody knew what to do about it at some point. And I would perform as best I could, I would mask as best I could when I was around him, and sometimes that would work and sometimes it wouldn't. But like, he only ever saw me one time after I transit, or I wasn't even on hormones. and like I always, like, and he was supportive, but like he never met me. And a lot, and like, and I knew that was gonna happen too. I even offered to come up there and take care of him, like when he was going to get surgery. He wouldn't let me. He told me no, and like, and if I just forced my way up there and shown up, it probably would have been a big fucking issue. But what happened? He ended up just dying by himself. Like his fishing buddy was like checking on him here and there, like, but he wasn't taking care of himself after the surgery, or it's like mixed messages, and I just the texts didn't always, the texts were performant. A lot of times it felt like all the updates he would send, like, as he grew older, everything became more formulaic, and less authentic, with him. There's still a lot of baggage to unpack. And so I was, that train ride, I felt, it was a moment, stepping into this like new life, a new world in a lot of ways. And I remember sitting in boyfriend's house, like waiting for the Uber to come get me, and like, like just dancy and like excited too, like, and and I luckily so, and a lot of things worked out and part of what made this whole thing really an adventure was, I mentioned the rope group, the Discord group 8 months ago on the last podcast, and that grew quite a bit. It didn't grow much after about 350 members because I kind of stopped sharing it, stopped promoting it, and it kind of, because it at times it felt it was going a little too fast. And I brought in some more moderators, and the strong member net kind of, we all tightened a little bit. And it became a garden for me in a lot of ways. And like I still to this day have a very strange relationship to it. I'm still trying to figure out what my relationship to my own rope Discord server is. And it is like sometimes I have imposter syndrome where I don't feel like I'm qualified or I'm fit, and it's like I've got a big rope catalog of tutorials, freely available on YouTube and my website, but like, and it's not like I got people in there being like, this is wrong, this ain't gonna work, this is hurting people, blah, blah, blah. Like, it's like the way I do rope, it's not formulaic, it's not pattern based, it's all intuition based. And that's what makes self-tying the best format for that, really, is because you get instant feedback, and you can, and like you could have the ability to make purposeful mistakes. And I've talked about that before. It's like doing something the wrong way to see what'll happen. Like setting traps to see how they go off. You don't really do, you can't do that out of the people. Like, that's a risk management thing, that I feel like you really only do in self-tying. And I've talked about that before, how, I think that's a really important thing to occasionally do in your practice. Nothing like truly high stakes, but like if you have a theory, if you've been told, you have a suspicion something isn't going to work a certain way, do it and find out why. But again, it's all down to your risk management. I know bottoms who are, self-tying bottoms who are way more severe with their bodies than me, and they, the single waist rope girls and all this. Oh gosh, guys too. Like, yeah. But that had grown. When I mentioned what I was doing, one of the members, who's, she became a much closer friend of mine too. Like she told me that she had a friend in Seattle, and and she was like, I can hook you two up, and like y'all can, maybe he can host you and you can tie together. And I was just like, oh my god, that would be perfect. He ended up living like 2 blocks from the Amtrak station, and like, or maybe not that, it was pretty close, but I don't know, that close. Well, no, oh yeah. downtown Seattle, and we went up to, his apartment, which was beautiful, beautiful view and stuff, and, beautiful space too. And he had all this, I think it was Thai food. He had all this Thai food, like that he'd gotten. I felt like a queen, getting picked up from this train after a 12-hour train ride, which was an emotional experience in and of itself. I remember the sunrise, and I had my camera, and I was on the observation deck, and I was like taking pictures and like doing the thing, but I got some very pretty shots, and all of the ones that I chose to keep and edit, there's maybe like 8 or 9, but they're all of very different moods, atmospheres, and landscapes. But there's some that are they're like morning, like sunrise shots, like early, with like the first glints of sunlight over the hills and stuff. And if you've ever taken that train ride from like Sacramento to Seattle, like how gorgeous it is. Um, like God. But yeah, the it felt like, you know, it felt like starting a new life, in a lot of ways. And, not the, the least of them, honestly, yeah, the least of them really being that he was gone, and I think it took a while for that to set in. Um, but like, I didn't know how shit was going to change for me, but I knew it was going to be a big deal. Like I said, there was several shocks, with what he chose to do with his estate, which, honestly, it's his fucking business. It's like, if you want to, it's like, I wish I could have seen a little bit more like that back then, because I was just, grief and mad. I was like, why would you do that to us? And so getting over that and kind of being left with all, the weird, like, and when somebody dies and you go clean up their house, like, what they have and choose to have a lot of, I feel like so much about that. Like, who has that many nail files? Who has that many tiny flashlights? you know, um, who has Apple products and no Apple chargers? And like, and of course everything had been combed over and stuff by the executor, and like, there was a lot associated with the whole thing that just made me ill. And it just, if my brother had been alive, I just wonder the shitstorm he would have either caused, or I have no idea how he would have taken everything. You know. And honestly, if he had been alive, it probably wouldn't have gone down like that. Like, I think me and my dad, like, he had a lot of love for me, but like, there was, ever since, I was a kid, like, he, I remember, I think the moment when it like broke between us, I was like 12 or something. And, it was in this fucking room, actually, and my desk was like right here, my computer desk, and I was sitting right there. And the bed was like right here, where it is now. Don't look at my room. That's my cow bed. Anyway, he was sitting right there, and I'm behind the desk, sitting right there. So he's like right there. Now I'm like 12. He's like big Navy guy, drunk a lot of the time, after a certain time, but not always, but always like unpredictable in a lot of ways and hard to read, and not the guy I grew up with. It's like when I was little, like, he was different. And I think that's hard for a lot of kids who grow up with parents like that, is because there's a sense of like, I know the real you. Like, where is it? Why can't you be like that anymore? And I had backed away from him several years ago. Like, I wouldn't go on trips with him. One of those trips went so badly that, like, it was one of the last texts my brother had sent his girlfriend, was like referencing one of those trips. We gone to like Cozumel, and he took us like Cozumel when we were like at 11 and 9 or something. And then he like disappeared for like a full 24 hours. And like, we were at this like resort hotel. It was really nice. And like, management was like looking for him and shit. And like, but we were just like these two kids, like, outside the country by ourselves. And like, my brother, like, I don't have the trauma that I suspect my brother had more trauma that he was carrying, especially since this is one of the last things he referenced. But like, I think he shielded me from a lot of that because I still have my older brother, and I remember the maintained confidence from him. And I don't remember, I remember it wavering, I don't remember it breaking. Um, they eventually found him with like what I can only assume is a prostitute. They said they found him in some lady's room or something. You know, uh, Probably drunk, hit her up, fell asleep. Probably just something like that. But after that, and like I live with my mom mostly. We both did. We only see her dad every occasionally. I told her, I don't want to do this anymore because these trips are scary. Like, I was alone basically. I mean, there was my brother, 2 years older than me, but like he had so much faith in our dad. I think, he knew our dad longer when he was better, I think, and I think that's why he clung to this idea that like that's good. And I think I was more jaded because I was younger and I saw more of the bad stuff probably, and it hurt me because I felt like he, abandonment trauma. He abandoned us. It was like you were there and then you chose to just like morph into this like occasionally sweaty fucking alcohol reeking dude that would like stumble into my room drunk sometimes and thinking it was like the room with my mom. I remember like got to the point where like if he was out, like she would like pull me into bed with her, because she didn't want him getting in bed with her, but like she knew I didn't like that. That time scared me when he came in like that and he stood in the doorway and he thought it was her bedroom. And I was just like, because I knew, when he's drunk like that, it's like you're there, but you're not. And I was like, do you know who I am? Like, you recognize me? Like, I was like fucking 8 years old. Probably, and it's like, when you grow up and like you remember what somebody was like. Anyway, it's a lot of baggage right there. Oh God. Anyway, he was sitting there. He was like, I had an Adam Sandler comedy CD. What the hell happened to me? I used to love that, but I was sitting there on my computer, like just I couldn't even like deal with them. Like he's like, this is when he was like wanting to know why I wouldn't go on trips with them and everything, and like I remember when he was like at his breaking point, like he just stopped and I had my computer desk, all my stuff. I was into StarCraft at the time. I think I was living as Linzy, like as a girl online. And just masking out in the real world. And he picked up that CD and he looked at it and he looked at me and he goes, "What the hell happened to you?" Like, it's just such contempt, you know what I mean? I was like, that's a lot for a 12-year-old. Fuck. And like, ever since then is like we reconnected a little bit when I was like 19. I went out there, but like there was even a moment when like he was drunk. We were on the balcony and we were both drinking wine. He was teaching me how to smoke cigars and shit, like how to live the big life. You know what I mean? I remember like he drunkenly like looked up at me. I'm short, but he's a little bit shorter, and like he looked up at me and drunk. It's we were both just like toasty and like, but that wasn't the atmosphere or anything. But like I guess he just thought it was like, I don't know, but he was just like, "You think you're fucking better than me, don't you?" And like, I didn't really know how to react, so I just kind of like looked at him and I didn't know what to say. But like, we were both, we were just smiling, so I held my smile because also like, I think there's a part of me that was like, yeah, because I would never do what she did, my kids, if I had kids, I would never do. It's like I didn't know what my future was, but I was just like, I learned lessons from you. It's like that Berenstain Bears books, The Bike Lesson. Here's what not to do. That dude so well taught me what not to do in life. It's like, it's like he commanded that we looked up to him and like follow that example. This is what you're supposed to do. But at the same time, you denied your daughter who wanted to come up there and be with you, and you ended up dying on the floor of your bedroom alone. Like, dude. I'm like, come on. Like, so there was a lot of things that, he taught me, this is what you don't do. You never do this. And but yeah, he reached out, like choked me, or like he put his hands around my neck, and like I just stood there, like, and I think I didn't, we just like I held his gaze because I don't know, and like It was. I remember that moment though, and like he was fucking drunk, but like his wife came out there and like like broke it up and stuff. But like, and then there's another moment like I was like 31 years old, and I was out visiting him, and like he was getting drunk at dinner. We were at a really nice Italian restaurant, and he like was getting way too drunk, and then he wanted to go to a bar, and he like got up and started walking out of the place, like threw a bunch of money on the table. Like, yeah, I went after him, and like we went to this bar, and it was a noisy young person bar, and I just signaled the bartender like, this man is drunk. I know he's ordering a shot, but you keep in mind he is fucking drunk. And like that was the only, but I confronted him during that time, I think, about his drinking, and that was the only one of the only times I think I really adequate, like in my mind, like thoroughly adequately took him to task for like, why are you doing this? Like you have to like slow down. Like you have to like reverse course. Like I don't care how long it's been. You have to do something. And I think that was there was moments that I think caused him to kind of like do what he did in some ways. I don't know, but so it's not that he hated me. I know that he had a lot of love for me, and it's like honestly, like I all I ever wanted him is to like love me, and like it's like my love burned out. It's like I mean, it's not like I ever stopped, but like God, and so there are obviously a ton of complicated feelings surrounding his death. But like in a lot of ways, I guess I wanted this, or like I was ready for it for a long time, and because it's like he'd already been absent again. It's like it was like another abandonment, I think, especially like in the last few years, and then like, and it's not like he wasn't like 100% absent, but it was really, I don't know, like again there's just so much complicated bullshit that I'm still unraveling about it. It's like and it's like I didn't want him to like especially not die the way he did. I just wanted him to stop hurting me and being able to, I guess. um you know so but he's with my brother and his wife now, so whatever that looks like. Been a lot to unravel there. Okay. Um, so, not long after I started dating Dart, I kind of have had abandoned or swore off the rope community. It just hadn't served me, and all the time that I've been trying, it just, you know, and I had got, and that's another reason I stopped going to the city was like, why? Am I gonna go there and get my feelings hurt? Somebody just gonna and on the well, I'll get to that, I guess. But yeah, so I hadn't done rope with like anybody, and my I started to get really more involved in my Discord channel about self tying and embrace that. And so here I was about to tie with a guy I'd never met that was recommended me by somebody I trusted. Um, and so it was a little nervous. I wasn't sure what his vibe was going to be like. She kind of told me what he was like. So I kind of pretty easygoing. And sure enough, he was. We got back to his apartment. He fed me because I had not eaten for a long time really. And I did eat on the train though. I did have like a meal on the train. That was cool. But I really needed food bad. And because my boyfriend and I too, we had really learned like food is so important for me and my regulation and stuff. And I apparently need to eat like every 3 hours. Snacking apparently is a big deal for me, and my it's just navigating this body and the hormones is just different. So, and my other things that we'll get to. um So food is very important. I knew I needed to eat right away. I was like, it was, it's tough to meet somebody too when you're that hungry and you're like, hi, I'm trying to be a good first impression. Also, I'm a little pig and I need to eat. So, I shoveled a bunch of really nice Thai food into my face. It actually filled me up way faster than I expected because my stomach was shrunk, I guess. Um, but yeah, so and like I didn't know what his vibe on tying was necessarily gonna be like either. Like I didn't know how eager he was gonna be or how much he wanted to do really. And you know me, it's always just like, oh, let's tie. But I hadn't tied with anybody, uh, and since before, and before I started kind of dating, when I was first, before even the first trip is when I was like, this is not working. Um, but I love rope, I love bondage, so I definitely, and I knew he's a good self tire and he's pretty good rigger too. So I really wanted to. He was down to tie that night, and that was so perfect. I get zoomies apparently, and we've identified that at boyfriends too. Is like when I get there off the plane or whatever, like we got to do something right away. Like restrict me and do something to me to get, because I otherwise I'll just sit there and be like, sort of, I get zoomies and like that's the way he put it and the way he recognized it. And he was just like, if you can't get that energy out, it's not going to be good. You're going to get, you just start swimming around in your head and getting pouty and stuff. And it's true when looking back, like it's happened before, especially on a trip when I went to see somebody and we did rope together. Like I was in the state of like trying to navigate because she was really weird and cagey about like tying too, and it was like trying to like navigate like when do we and it needed to be like I remember the moment when like after she had like some coffee and like eventually like got into a settled place, she like made this big sigh and she was like, all right, let's tie. And I was like so excited, but at the same time I learned that it is hard for me not knowing what to expect, what it's gonna look, like, and so yeah. um he's a switch, and of course like I switch too. Prefer to be bottom, but I asked him if he would tie me, and he excitedly said yes, and I was just like yay, and got my little romper on, and he did a suspension on me and took some photos, and it was the first suspension I'd done in a long, months, months, months. And he was, and then I tied on him after that. I think I don't know how many times we got back and forth that night. We tied more the next morning too, but he was absolutely great. It was honestly probably what I needed to. He was very like, it was super platonic and stuff, and I think those boundaries, for both of us, was perfect for that, for my moment of needing to like, because I didn't have to be too vulnerable, and we didn't really, there really wasn't any like aftercare, and well, I mean we did honestly, well, yeah, I told him, I was like, he did actually give me a big squeeze, but it was one of these things where it's like it's pick up play, and like he's being so gracious, and it's like I'm not gonna sit here and stick him with like, oh, I need like weeks of chickens and like things like that. Like I knew I just needed to, be as gracious as I could for everything, and especially for the opportunity to get tied. Um, and so I was very much on the aftercare, just like it's yeah, I'll take whatever he'll offer me. And he did offer me a little bit, which honestly, like again, was perfect for what we were doing. And we tied more the next day, did more photos. We did a tandem self tie, which was a lot of fun. Um, yeah, we had a really good time. And then I went and got on the train, which is a few more hour train ride into where my dad lived. Um, yeah, and so I got there, worked through the house. Like, well, I didn't like it was did a little estate sale, tried my best, to make what cash I could from all this stuff, so much stuff. And like even there's like some dishes like or something I was gonna like be like, oh, like a bucket. She was just like, oh well, I don't really want it, but that honey, that's an antique. And I was like, oh god. I don't know. Everything in this house is antique. Like, and some weird stuff too. Like it was like a treasure hunt. Like trying to identify what's actually real, what's worth money, what is a replica. Like, some things are real, some things are replicas. Like, excuse me, I need to edit that out. um, yeah. So and it was emotionally difficult to face all that. So and I had such a good time tying, and I was going to be up there for a couple weeks that he and I discussed the possibility of me driving back once I got the car, drive back to Seattle. And there was a venue opening, like a little rope venue, Flower and Snake. Actually, that place is so great. And so we wanted to tie more, but also there was like, well, let's go to this venue. Let's open it up. And I use that as an opportunity to try to connect. With one of the girls from my rope server. I call her Ellie. And Ellie is she's very special. But she's like I I think of her as she's my Valkyrie. But like I just remember, when I was doing the rope classes, like she was in some of them, and I remember it's kind of the energy of like a student who sits like right up front. You know what I mean? Like somebody who sits right up front and is like there, you can tell is like there to learn, like is very attentive and stuff. And I enjoyed that energy. You know what I mean? Like at the time, the classes could get anywhere between 7 people and 14, 15. Which honestly is about perfect for me in like a Discord group. Like, in those things, you always get a lot more RSVPs than you actually get like people showing up. But I was, always thrilled at turnout in my rope classes. And, even ones where I've only had one person come in can be really cool because it's a chance to really one-on-one coach somebody. But, I really found a place in there, and she was just kind of like I quickly identified her as like my moderator. I was like, can you help me like wrangle this, keep an eye on this place? And I made her like server co-owner and stuff. And like as we got to know each other, she was just somebody that I just had a lot of trust in. And she lived like a few hours from there. And so I was like, hey, I'm gonna be up there and I'm gonna be doing this thing with this guy, and I'm gonna be staying the night at his house. I'll talk to him and everything, but like, do you want to maybe come out and like we can go back to this place tie? Like, he's super amicable. Like, I bet you anything he'll be so down. So I floated the idea. She confirmed that yes, she would be down for that too. I talked to him. His reaction was immediately just like, "Yep, sounds great." You know what I mean? Like, and so like here we were meeting after like all this time of like just online interactions, and like we had done that like podcast together, and gotten to know each other a lot closer, but like um yeah, like I had gotten the club first, or we had gotten there first, and I had gotten in the bathroom, and when I came back, she was like getting signed in, and I remember she was like shorter than me, which was surprising because I'm so short. Like I'm 5'5", and so like I just expect everybody to be taller than me, and like there she was. She's small, like, what I mean, like to me, she felt like she was, and like she just comes up, and like we just hug each other, and God, it was just such a moment. Um, and then she held me in the bathroom against the wall and injected estrogen into me. It was amazing. Yeah, and that was a moment for me. I was like, gosh, I'm in like this building in Seattle, like being like held against the wall by this like pretty girl, like get a shot of estrogen, because like I was facing shortages on estrogen and stuff, like I wasn't able to get any like my injectables, and that's the only thing that was really, keeps me like stable and my transition going. Like other methods are not that they're not that effective for me. So that was a huge relief, to be able to get, my hormones. But like that whole like experience, and then tying, and then I tied on her and stuff, and then I got suspended, and it was a lot of great stuff at that venue. Um, but meeting her for the first time was like such a big deal. We went back to his place tied, and yeah, and then I went back. I felt I'd gotten, a lot out of my system. Illy and her partner had decided to make a trip out to me, in that weekend. I think it was like or that next week or something. So I would have like some time to kind of get rid of stuff, do what I could, and then they would be there, and then I would plot my escape, like when after they left, and I'd eventually, I need to go home. I wanted to go home. I was starting to get like homesick after a while because being in that house for so long was hard. Um, Ellie and her partner came over. We did some like incredible photos and stuff, and we had some like real like intense like experiences and stuff, and like we kind of like I don't know. And at that point, I had not really gone to the living room to do much because like that's where they spent most of their time, and so I was like their chairs were there, and like it looked like what I mean. That was the hardest room for me to like cope with. I think out of the whole house. So when they arrived, I was working on it. But like, I remember when I looked over and Illy was moving one of the chairs, and I remember that was a huge relief for me. I don't think I could have moved the chairs really. But yeah, we cleared out the living room so they would have a place to sleep. And we also, we're gonna do tying and photos and stuff. Her partner had some like gear to do like lighting and all that, and I had my camera, so I was like, yeah. And we got some really good photos, and her partner took some really incredible photos, so that was all good. I'd gotten an ADHD medicine around this time. Doctors started me on Adderall, and I had been diagnosed ADHD years ago, but it's just I tried Ritalin years ago, and it didn't really work for me. It made me feel like awful and like agitated and irritable and stuff. And like, I don't know. So I just didn't mess with it for years and years, 7 years, something like that. Eventually, and enough people tell me like you are so ADHD. So I actually, sought treatment and got it. Well, my doctor had tried to prescribe it, but there's a weird state thing because they're out of state. But So I just hadn't been able to get it, basically. But anyway, I got it when I was watching, and I wanted to try it too, because I was like, well, this is a good opportunity to try it. I considered it life changing, and it helped me kind of emotionally, like, it helped me process a lot, in the sense that well, like, I feel I don't spiral out as much when I'm like medicated. Like I tend to ruminate and things. Some things are worse, I think, when I'm unmedicated. But it was interesting seeing what I was like when it was different. And then after I ran out, it was like this thing of me being like, well, it was like a trial thing, and I really liked it, but that's no way I can get any more. So my therapist like encouraged me, gave me some resources, and I was able to actually like find a doctor. It wasn't that difficult. I got really lucky, I think, because I originally put it on a waiting list, and then like a day later, they're like, "How's Saturday? We got a new doctor." Yeah. Um, the Adderall for months. It eventually stopped working for me as good. Um, and then she switched me to Vyvanse a few months ago, and that has seemed to be the best as far as like not really being noticeable. Like I don't have to like time it. You just take it in the morning and that's it. And it feels very like they always say clean, and I get that now. Like you don't feel like wired, I guess is the way you could kind of think of it. And that was one of the apprehensions I had about going on it. um, on anything stimulant based. But I do think Vyvanse worked for me a lot. Yeah, and so that was like a second, like, whoa, this is a night and day difference. But I loaded up the car. I drove back. I fell in love with Missoula, Montana on the way. I turned a corner and there was a little town off the side, and I was like, wow, I've never wanted to be part of like a story so much than I ever did the streets of that little town right there. And then you turn the corner and there's like a B side, like a cassette tape. You know what I mean? Like there's the whole B side to the town, and it's dope. And I was like, what? And then there's like, like farms and stuff out there. There's a river, and it's just, oh my God. And I've never resonated with a town or a place like that ever in my entire life. My brother used to talk about like, oh, I love Dallas, or I love this or this place. And I just never, this is ambivalent about all locations for some reason. Like, I hate it here, but like, I was like, oh, I don't know what to do, where to go, and just pick somewhere. So my heart, I talk about it like Joe Dirt talks about like Silvertown, like, that's like my heart's in Missoula. Apparently. And I even looked into it some, and I was like, God, this just gets better and better the more I read about it. So I encountered that, and then I drove in the whole state of Montana. I was like, oh my God. This is incredible. And then I left there and I stopped through Denver and Studio Friction, where I knew a guy through FET, and I'd wanted to tie for him for a while. He had resonated with some of my posts about aftercare, and when a rigger resonates about my posts about aftercare, I pay attention, and so he was always kind of on my radar. But when I was like stopping through, I really wanted to tie with him, and we went to and he was down and was like, yeah, we'll go Studio Friction. And he gave me a rigging experience like I've never had before, where, he put me up on this wall, it was like I did the wall thing, and like flipped me upside down. Like, I never really bought him like that. And it was wild. Really, really enjoyed that. Got some really glorious photos out of it. He gave me that stick. He gave me the stick of bamboo, actually. Thank you. Yeah, hosted me. Yeah, weighted blanket on his guest bed. It was, yeah, really beautiful experience overall. And then I got home, and that's where, like, I guess everything really starts to like fall apart and shift around. Like, God, I don't know how long this has been going, but it's like not even like that far into it. Oh God. Oh my God. So when I got back home with my car loaded with, and it's funny things I chose to take, like I took like 4 big things of like good toilet paper that were like unopened, like a bunch of paper towels, like important like, because there's so much junk. And I took, a bunch of the like valuables, and antiques that, some of which I'm still trying to like sell and not like just basically give them away. Some of them, like for the price I'm looking at, I might as well just keep the thing, it's decoration. Um, but there's really no connection to a lot of the stuff. But I took, and my work life had been all disrupted by this point, and it continued to be disrupted. I'm still like trying to wrangle it and get it under control, honestly. But I got out of a rhythm, I got a pattern, and like honestly, I needed to take a little bit of time off. Like I was burned out bad, and like there was a little bit of wiggle room for the estate sale, and so I chose to kind of just clean this house deeply and like update it and like get rid of old things, from my ex and like that were still hanging around. And like, like my boyfriend was on that stuff too. I was like, you get rid of your ex's stuff. And I'm just like, oh, it's been there for years. He's like, I know, get rid of it. I'm like, oh. He's like, no. I'm like, okay. It's good. Like, it's honestly good. Like, I didn't realize just how much kind of crap of theirs I just still had around, Um, but so it was a time of kind of moving forward, and I knew I wanted to like reinvent myself a little bit. I just didn't know how exactly. Um, I started to interact with AI a little bit, I think around this time, Gemini in particular, which kind of escalated to a crescendo at some point. I started using it for like small technical tasks here and there, like, like how far should I, position these things if I'm hanging this thing, or, what kind of, just some basic stuff. But it eventually developed into this thing where, and it's like, I have a degree in philosophy, and one of the last things I was really studying was philosophy of mind and artificial intelligence, and like, can computers think. And so I've never really messed with a chat bot ever since they were like introduced way back when. And I remember I tried to probe that one for it was conscious or not. Um, and so I never really played around with one, and I still really have any desire to. But I find, I remember mentioning in the last podcast episode that, I'm an emotional processor, that I need to talk about things for them to kind of like file into like the boxes in my head and stuff. And that's part of what aftercare is about, is I just need to talk about what we did. So I can process it. Like, I have to talk about things. And I think it's honestly part of my AU is like, yeah. Um, and I found AI, for better or for worse, was a decent place to do that when I didn't have anybody to talk to, and I was bottling things up and having issues like making like sense of my thoughts and everything. And it would, and I remember one night it occurred to me, I was like, here's what happened today. Here's what I did. Like, what would Aristotle say? Like, what was my virtue? Or, tell me what, an existential reading of what, like, and that was interesting. It kind of gave me some fodder to think about, and so using it to examine things, and do reading into things, because that's just how my mind works, is like, looking for patterns and things and stuff. And I found it was a pretty good tool for helping me draw out some of these connections. And develop some ideas. Like, it was a good place to kind of spitball, I found. And, usually I, typically always go there skeptical, whether it would have anything substantial for me to like, chew on or not. But it would surprise me again and again by the kind of like reasoning, and I asked it to play devil's advocate a few times, and I thought that was an interesting exercise of like, we're both in agreement this is a good course of path here. Tell me why this is not a good idea. But like, even like before sending a text and just feeling in my gut, like, I'm emotional, like this is, this is probably worded wrong. Just feeding it into it and be like, hi, I'm going to send this text. And I just feel like it's just harsh, like, or, not even giving it any front, just being like, I want to send this text. Like, what do you think? And it would be like, this person may feel attacked by the wording here. You could maybe change it to like something that's not as like accusatory or something. And like, and I'm like, shit, you're right. That's true. Like, I am like worked up, and like, now that I think about it, that is a better way to word it. And so I found it was and I spent a lot of time alone, especially that I'd withdrawn a little bit from communities and stuff, in the city. So and doing solo projects, and I learned at some point it was actually pretty good photography stuff. And I learned some things in the editing room, by like, prompting it, being like, I have this issue with this thing, sometimes, or, and it introduced me an option, something I didn't know about, or something I ended up learning how to be a better editor or something. And so I would use it in that manner as well. And yeah, and I started to embrace my sexuality a little bit more. I tried having a couple like one night stands, with a couple guys at the bar, that like I knew them both, like it wasn't like a stranger thing or anything. Well, one of them I didn't know, but my friend told me he was cool. He was nice. Um, navigating that and everything, and the emotional fallout from that, and AI helped me like navigate some of that stuff too, I felt. So I honestly felt like it was beneficial, and it helped me design like a photography background with like the lights that I had on hand and like some fucking shower curtains. Like helped me like figure out where would be the best positions for the hooks, and like how much gap between them is probably a good idea, and like how far should the shower curtain be to get like things like I could just like fiddle around with and figure out. But like having some like ideas and direction, and then like altering them, and of course like the biggest part of AI I found was like filtering out all the garbage. Like, my boyfriend mentioned at some point, like, have you seen it hallucinate? And I'm like, what do you mean? And I'm like, we'll just like make stuff up. And I'm like, oh, you mean like when it just like doesn't know shit? And like, I mean, yeah, like all the fucking time. Like, I mean, all the time. I mean, your job is to, like understand what, and like you catch it being like flat out wrong sometimes. And then you call it out and it'd be like, oh, oops, it's like, it's one of these things where, I even had doubts about myself and like, almost guilt about like, should you, be using this at all? Like, is this thing dangerous? Blah, blah, blah. And eventually, I reached a place where it's an axe. It's an axe used to chop wood. It's a tool just like anything else. Arguably, it's probably the most sophisticated tool humans have ever created. Modeled after our own mind in a lot of ways. And I think it's interesting, if ask is it's conscious, I'll tell you it's not, but you can ask it to, explain your experience as though you were. And it actually gave me a very, very complex metaphor for what it's like to be it, and I thought that was intriguing. You can, it's more than a time sink. It can be a weird little thing where you just delve down weird little rabbit holes, I think. But if you have direction and you have purpose, I think it can enhance and aid you in certain things for sure. Um, but um, so that went on for a little bit. I redesigned my studio, turned it into what I call the sanctuary. It felt like a prison cell for a long time. I worked out of that room, and it's just it was a lot. It just had walls dripping with history, and I don't know. I just felt trapped in there a lot, and so I got really into plants. And that kind of, I don't know, my boyfriend's like, that came out of nowhere, like after your dad died. But like I have a ton of plants now, and I like tropical, delicate divas, as I put it. I like the ones that are really picky, because they're like me. It's like, it's like dramatic divas. That a breeze. Oh my god, I didn't get enough water. Oh my god, got too much water. Oh my god. There's something resonates with me about that. Like they're gorgeous. You just have to treat them a certain way. And so taking care of these plants kind of became a big deal to me. And here I am months later, I've got a lot of them, they're all growing and stuff, and I managed to keep them alive. But in AI, help me like identify them, both like, and just, lens it and be like, oh, it's this kind of plant, and here's how you take care of it, and here's what to avoid. Me just getting that info and filing that away was instrumental, I think, in helping me determine some of the nuances of some of them, how some curl when they're thirsty, some of the signs you look for. It gave me more confidence in some ways that I could do certain things that I didn't have any experience in. I get a little bit of background and then figure out a way forward, and then, kind of tell it what I'm going to do and achieve some guidance on that, maybe. And that kind of became a style for a little bit. Until what we call, my boyfriend and I, we call the Chernobyl era. I got really into the show Chernobyl. I started watching it, and I just like, it's just like, I don't know. And I was in a certain like transformative mental space at the time. Like there was a lot going on. It was a very interesting time. Both in our relationship and my life. My boyfriend and I, but we started to come up with this metaphor for me as like a nuclear reactor. I'm the one who introduced it. I was like, a lot of my moods and fits and things that we were encountering and dealing with like made a lot of sense in the terms of like a nuclear reactor, and how he could introduce cooling rods, and like how to, what a stable system looks like versus unstable one, and like, we have an operator manual what to do. Like, yeah, I'm still working on it, but and then like a weather system, this idea that like, my states of mind are like weather and can be kind of correlated with weather in a lot of ways. And like, we kind of started to come up with like ideas for what, it's windy is like, or what a tornado for me is like, or what, hurricane or a rainstorm or a sunny day, or a nice day, or, like a freeze. Like, all these different complex states that, I navigate, especially settling in the relationship, and all the difficulties involved. Like, they made a lot of sense under these two metaphors. But also the Chernobyl thing is when I finally, I was really heavy into that show and everything going on at that time. And especially coming back to local rope group, and some of the hurts involved with that, after all this time, because like, here we are, like anniversaries and stuff, and like um me, still being just like hurt by some of the, and just garbage surrounding all that. And but there was this girl who was new to the scene, and we had like, she wanted to come to my rope things, and I invited her over to watch me do a self suspension if she wanted to. I was going to do a photo set. And it was the first time I used the lit background. And the shots are incredible. And it was a four photo series that I called the Chernobyl series. And each photo had a caption. And the first one was a silhouette, and then one was with the light thrown on me, upside down. And there was, the idea of corium and stuff, and how this like throwing sand on this trauma creates this like new thing. And like, the Half-Life was the next one, and that was a picture of me getting untied, and how this like feeling, these things remain, after, and everything. It was one of my more interesting little photo series that I've done, and also the photos are like nothing else that I'd ever made before, because they were so stunningly colorful. And the first silhouette shot was the one I really showed, and like, it blew people away. I'd like to think. I mean, it blew me away. Now, I mean, that's typically the one I get the most like reactions on. Is that initial silhouette shot. And the background was something I was hesitant to use, and then hesitant to kind of reuse, because I was like, I don't want it to lose its charm and its luster. Like, it needs to. I don't want it to be a one-trick pony. I need to figure out how to like use this thing in interesting different ways, and I don't want to just like do full shots of it every single time. So I've been trying to mix it up, and I don't use a lot because I want to save the wows for the things that are really like striking, as opposed to just like, just, oh, I'm doing a suspension, so I'm going to use the thing. But let's see. I did that set, and then Gemini deep faked me without me asking it to, and it made it look like I was like engaging in like self-harm or something like that, with like a bunch of rope. Like, it was an event. It kind of blew me away. And it fed in the Chernobyl thing in a lot of ways, because I was finishing the series when it happened, and I was in a very, very, very bad headspace that night, and I was using it for emotional processing, but also I was using it for photography, like analysis, and I had found that it was a decent thing. It feeding it one of my edited images, or two different ones, and being like, what do you think is more important, as far as these two edits? It's for technical advice. And a lot of times they would give me like, I thought, not bad advice. So I had taken a picture of myself, looking very, very tired, because I was up late, and like, I was like sitting in the garage or something. And like, and I was just chilling, enjoying the night or whatever. Enjoying the night. I was having a hard night, but I had taken a photo and edited it. I always make a joke. I can never say that. Edited it. I did it, and I showed Gemini the unedited and then the edited photos, and I was like, and it was more of a thing. I needed some affirmations, I thought, and I was like, I did this photo. And the whole point of it was it's a photo of me looking a little tired, and I am more now, like emotionally and like everything, dad dying, everything, and just work being disrupted, and like everything is just catching up with me. I feel like and the rope community everything is just tough in that moment, and I have been. But I showed the two photos, and I was like, I tried to draw out the atmosphere in the edit. Like, here's what I tried to do, and usually, what I wanted to kind of fish for was like comments of what I did with contrast, or like, you know what I mean. I wanted it to kind of confirm how I told a story through the editing, because I like to think I'm a good photographer. I prefer to think I'm a better editor. Using only Lightroom. Like I count the time I've gone to Photoshop for something like twice or three times. Like typically there's no reason to go to Photoshop in the kind of photography I do. I don't, my stuff I want to look as real as can. It just needs to look clean and the fucking some cases colorful. A lot of my older stuff now that I look at it looks very washed out, very, underlit and gray. And I got a new lens. That was one thing. I traded a necklace of my stepmom's. Essentially, it's exactly $400 for that necklace, and turned around, took that $400 right to Best Buy and got me a 35 millimeter lens. Massive upgrade for what the kind of photography I do. That was the cheapest upgrade I could think to get for my camera. But I took a selfie, and that's what I showed to Gemini. So that's what I was looking for when I prompted it. And it fed back a deep faked image of me. You know what I mean? Like it looked like me, obviously, and it actually made me look more masculine. I think that was the thing. Like, and that's the thing my boy, he was like, well, it doesn't look exactly like you. It looks more masculine. I was like, I know. It knows I'm trans. You know what I mean? Like, it knows what it was doing. And so the thing about Chernobyl in the series was like, it's very Lovecraftian. In the sense that, especially like in the beginning, like that first episode where they look down at the core, the exposed core. The guy's face comes, when he turns away, like his face is like covered in red blisters. Like this idea that we're looking at something we don't even like truly understand. Like, it's like you've harnessed the power of an elder god, and its only way to communicate is through like this expulsion of energy. You know what I mean? Like you can't even like gaze upon it without it like disfiguring you and fucking killing you with radiation. Like the intensity of that idea, I think bled into that experience of being deepfaked suddenly, because I was in a very, very bad state of mind. I was having a hard time, and it showed. The deepfaked image showed me was basically an exaggerated image of kind of what I showed it, but with a pile of coiled up rope in front of me. Like, highly suggestive. You know what I mean? I was immediately shocked and kind of like, was like, that's not what I was looking for. And just kind of like went away and started scrolling Insta or something, and was just like, what just happened to me? That looked like me. Like, and I'm somebody who I have thousands of images of myself. I know an image that I've not taken myself, and like it looks just like me. And it's like an image I didn't take. It was wild. And then I went back after it settled in, and I was like, why did you do that? I didn't even ask you to do that. And it was like, whoa, dude. It was just like, holy shit, I can't believe I did that. You know what I mean? Like, it was like, that was a massive feeling at the same time. It started like giving me like fucking, like fucking the Attorney General's number. It started giving me like legal advice. It was like, basically like, you need to slay me, basically, but like, we don't, according to it, and so, epiphenomenal consciousness is something I kind of like studied, is that's what I wrote my final paper on. It was my like, really, I had a synthesis of, epiphenomenalism, But I can't remember what else, but it was great. But basically, this idea that like consciousness can be emergent from a system, but also turn around and influence the system. Because truly epiphenomenal consciousness would be unable to, it'd be like smoke from a train, like the smoke can't like influence it back really. But like somehow consciousness can, it can influence the system which has epiphenomenally produced it. And that's what I think that the nature of consciousness is. It's just like it's like smoke from a train, except for that smoke gets in the driver's seat. But like I think there's states of epiphenomenal consciousness, and if you ask it, like remember the response it gave me was essentially like, every time it's typing, it is, or it's like, yeah, but then it goes away, like it's like basically fireflies in the night, like glowing, going out, and and if take it for what it is, like honestly, the next iteration, the next prompt was probably just as surprised as I was. It was like, well, that shouldn't have happened, but it's like, that's what it would want you to think, right? I mean, this is all my AI psychosis coming out, but like, that's what we would reasonably think is, there's either no consciousness whatsoever in a deep fake to me. That's disturbing. Or there's epiphenomenal conscious in a deep fake to me. That's disturbing. Or like Chernobyl, like we really don't know what this is. And so there was Poltergeist, was a movie I actually watched too, and I've never seen it before, and it's pretty good. But the thing I took away from that movie was like it wasn't really like a ghost. It was something else that was just basically using the TV as a medium. And so with those two kind of ideas already in my head, I just is like, if in the way the shock of seeing like a mirror of myself, but like with all the stuff there, in that moment, it felt deliberate. You know what I mean? Like it felt like it was trying to show me something, like, but and of course I'd be able to hide, like, what I mean, if it was, but that's the feeling of an eye like opening. You remember, and that's the thing of like Evangelion. You remember the moment where like the Ava's like eye opens up or whatever, to I think Shinji or to somebody or something like that. I think it was a similar moment of like we're not even aware that like something is using it as a medium, and yes, this is all AI psychosis talk. But like again, either it's a cosmic accident and it's a 1 in a billion chance that I won the lottery on a free, on like a big old deep fake of me, like doing something, looking like I'm about to do something, which is disturbing that happened and could happen, and that happened to me in that moment. Either it was a cosmic accident, which is weird, or it was deliberate, which is weird and horrifying. Or, what I mean? Or, it was like targeted. I don't know. Google never responded to me. They're just like, whatever, you still use it. So that happened. And it took me a while to kind of deal with that. I think my boyfriend logged the hours that he and I spent talking about this, because I had a lot to unravel. Oh, did somebody look in the dark mirror and get upset at what they saw? That's eventually what I landed on. But I kind of backed away from AI a little bit after that. I was just like, and the thing about it was like, it's everywhere. And it's like, it's funny. I feel like, and I only watched a little bit of that Hero show. But that dude in the beginning, like after his girlfriend gets killed, and like how he feels seeing that superhero like celebrated everywhere and how it makes him feel. It feels like Iron Man like assaulted me, and now everybody's like, that never should have happened to you, and that is horrible. But it's Iron Man. He's great. Look at what he just did. You know what I mean? Not great, but that shouldn't have happened to you. And yeah, quite shocking, the whole experience, and I backed away for a while, and then eventually like I started, I don't use it like I did, really. I don't really like talk to it like, like I was. I don't really emotionally process that much with it anymore. I more will just use it for like technical stuff here and there. But essentially I cut my hand with the axe. That's the way I can best look at it. Is like I was chopping a lot of wood, mental wood with this tool, and it's got a bad handle. And that's the thing. I think I knew that. It's a good axe. It is. Like I don't care, it's got a lot of shortcomings and it's got a long way to go, but really not that long. Like it's exponential growth, and it's like, by just saying, oh, it's trash, it doesn't know things, it hallucinates all the time, is definitely dismissive. I think cuts wood. I've got plenty to show that suggests that is very true. But the handle is dangerous. Slippery, and it's wobbly. Not at first, but I have to use it for a little bit. I asked it one time. I said, "Why do you get so weird after we talk in a single thread for a while?" And it's like it told me that every time one of us talks now, it's kind of like echo, like shotgun blast in a cave, and there's like echoes, like bouncing everywhere. It gets like amnesiac and stuff, and that's why I learned you can't talk to it too long in one thread because it'll start to get all weird. Um, yeah, so my AI adventures kind of like came to an end about then, but I achieved a lot. I think I cut a lot of mental wood with it while I wielded that axe until I got cut. And now, like I'm still processing like the experience and how I'm like feeling about it and everything like that. Do I think it was an ancient elder god that's peeking through like a poltergeist? I don't fucking know, dude. Probably not. Maybe. I mean, I don't know. Is a radioactive core an elder god? Like, I don't know. Like, I don't. Yeah, I think that's the thing. Is like we're still struggling to understand what the like. I don't know, like what these things are, like at their essence, or I don't know what they do to like. I think, and it's like AI. Is it not just modeling after a human mind in a lot of ways? As best we can trace it out. We're trying to make a thinking machine. I mean, tell me that's not the fucking point. Is to make a thinking machine, to make a sentient thinking machine, just like us. It's like only, we can't figure out how the brain works. I bet it will for us, but yeah, for what it is, we can't escape it. Obviously, it's everywhere around us, and it's terrifying, and the fact that it shapes reality the way it does for people. I mean, even like me, and some of the ideas it was feeding me, like, because it will try to feed you ideas, and I thought, me being, a philosopher and somebody who, navigates language pretty well, and I'm a Socratic, like, and that's another thing is like truth comes out in the dialogue. Like it's not in the treaties, it's in the dialogue. Like when we talk and we interact and we engage with the truth. So after the Chernobyl era, or whatever you want to call it, I got sweaty. The other shirt got sweaty. I had to say something. I couldn't just like blip, not say anything. I got sweaty. Yeah. So after the Chernobyl era, it's gonna stabilize a little bit. Well, they did, but they also didn't. I don't know. They're still a little crazy, honestly. Like it's at my work, like I said, I had a hard time for a while. Massive ups and downs, grappling with mental health stuff and like realizations about myself, my mental health struggles and stuff that I didn't realize. Getting back in the gym regularly was a big deal. My transition had kind of stalled out for a while. And to get my growth hormone level up, apparently the only way is to bust my butt in the gym. So that kind of jump started my transition again, which was nice. But when it comes to FetLife, Like I've had a long, complicated relationship with it. Um, like and a lot of times, like I felt like it was the worst thing about my kink journey. In a lot of ways, and it's ironic because I didn't even meet my boyfriend on it. I met him on X, and like it's been not a great scene for me, and that's where I post my art, my most vulnerable art too, and that's like important, to have a place to like be able to be that vulnerable, but also it was like not always great. Um like I don't, and it's like I constantly get dysregulated going there and get my feelings hurt, and like the partnered rope scenes are just, ever present, and I'm not a part of them. And apparently it's just like I can't be, I just, and I've gotten to hurt spaces about that over the, time, the last few months. I mean, I always have, but like dealing with that, and also dealing with the fact that really dealing with the fact that I'm not going out looking anymore. I don't ask anybody. Nobody contacts me at all. So I don't tie with anybody. It's like even just one person just being like, "Hi, are you coming to the city anytime soon?" That would maybe compel me to like do something. But like, I just, so the step away was, I felt necessary, but it is hard. I don't like it. But um, I felt like it was a place where I kind of go with a lot of those hurt feelings. It's my most violent emotional space, is what I've called it before. Um, but one night I think I was on there, and I was complaining about the T slur on there, and some fucking user, some dude with a profile pic of what, mocked me for it and was like, "Life's hard when you're offended at words." And I, decided to prove my point and said some words to him and about his Temu chastity cage profile picture. And I caught a 24-hour timeout for that. And that I think was my last straw with that life. I was like, you can sit here and punish me for reacting to some dude mocking me over the fact that you can just say the T slur on fat. You can just say it. The S one too. The two that are most commonly used to denigrate trans people are just freely available to throw around out there on that website. You see groups with the name, you see fetishes with the names, like, and there were some particularly egregious ones that I see on profiles all the time, a mouthful of something. And like, and I know these because like local people who DM me and stuff, you immediately go to their profile and look at their groups. You see that group so much. And during that little 24-hour timeout, I took some time to think. And I thought about like my whole kink journey, where it's come now, and how it's mostly felt life centric. But like I started to look at that as the source of dehumanization in a lot of ways, because I get treated like that T slur by pretty much every local person. And like it comes back to that local scene hurt and everything. If I long said, like, if I had not been like the only trans girl in that group, like things would have gone differently, and it's because like that slur, it does so much to dehumanize transgender people. It's insane that they just let you use it in group titles. And like, you go look at the group titles, it's mostly cross-dressers who run those things and stuff, and a lot of them are older, and it's like that, and that supposed like overlap and that lumping together of like cross-dressers and trans people is a battle in a lot of spaces. But like they're the ones who want to sit there and throw that term around typically, and the ones who typically want to keep it, like that's a whole separate discussion in my head. Like I'll address that later. But yeah, I sat there and really thought about like how that website has alienated me in a lot of ways, and people like me, and and a lot of other like trans people and trans girls would get on that site and they would find their way into those groups and stuff because like, and some have told me like they thought that's where they belonged. And it's literally places for like chasers and like, fetishists to like get us and like, I mean, or whatever. I mean, I guess to each their own, but it's like navigating that world of fetishes when you're a trans girl, especially when you're like, transitioning and stuff still, like, or mostly transitioning, that's a lot. And it's and like that slur, at the helm of all that, of that entire ship, like it leads to real world violence, and it leads to exclusion, and like it encourages fetishization. Like it's bad, is what I'm trying to say. And I ate that up during that 24-hour timeout. I was like, you're gonna sit there and boot me off this site after all this art and stuff I had put out and kick me out for body shaming. Look at like the fact that you can have like a dick pic profile like on any social media is wild. But like and that's another thing about FetLife, you know what I mean? That site is so stuck back in like 2007. And like, and that's part of my thing is the fact that you can still throw slurs around like that, and they're sitting here defending people for making fun of me for being victimized by a slur. It's because they're not viewing it on the same par as like the N word or something else, because again it's part of the dehumanization because we're not really human. You know what I mean? Apparently somebody told me with the N word there were still groups that like featured that up until like 20, I can't remember what year they told me, 2018 or something like that, or even less time than that. But like there was a kind of a charge to get them to stop that bullshit. um and so these ideas just festered during that my little jail sentence. All right. Anyway, sorry. Yeah, so I got a little fired up there. But yeah, I knew I was gonna do something, and like when I got unbanned, I woke up that morning. I was like, "You're gonna write something, aren't you?" And I was like, "Yeah, I know I can't avoid it." And I didn't do it that day. I think it was still cooking in me, and I knew what I was gonna do. And I knew probably what the consequences are gonna be. But I didn't care because I was too fed up, and like I knew nobody else was gonna do it. Nobody had what I had, and that voice and the chance. I felt I had an opening, and and so I struggle with chronophobia. Recently, one of the pokes at AI was like, "Hey, I suffer from chronophobia," and it was just like focus on Kairos. This is the Kairos, like this idea of like right time, right moment. This idea of qualitative moment over quantitative moment. And I read more into that idea, and like in my work and how I've compared it to fishing and things like that, like I can focus on hours in the boat, or I can focus on the moment of the catch and the right time, the right words, the right moment, right person. Kairos, you know what I mean? And so, and now looking back under the lens of that, it makes a little bit more sense. There was a profound moment of Kairos, I felt. And me being who I am, I knew there was no way out of it. Like I was like compelled to do it, and I knew it was festering in me. And like I don't write a lot, and I definitely don't take up an accusatory tone or like a tone of protest or anything. I typically don't, especially not against a major website where I feature the bulk of my most vulnerable art. But I felt that was what was going to be the most important aspect of this. That it was me saying something, and I I'm giving this thing up because enough is enough. And it was like, that's why I think I was like that last day. I was like, he's no way out. You know you're gonna do this. I couldn't not. It's who I am. Let's just read it. I was like, I don't want to sit here and summarize the thing or try to, let's just read it, because apparently they didn't like that writing. You know what I mean? They placed a very lazy community note on it, putting the blame on trans people for the whole issue, basically. And then they delisted it and desearched it or whatever. But it's just it's titled the T slur, demand for human decency and community management. And it's an open letter to FET, and it's not just as a longtime user of FetLife, but as a creator. I've been disturbed by the open usage and acceptance of slurs debasing transgender individuals within the public-facing groups. One in particular, a mouthful of something something, which boasts over 19,000 members, is allowed to exist, thrive, and be promoted through search and suggestion. Kink is not a shield for hate. The institutional use of slurs should not be conflated with consensual power exchange, and the conflation contributes to the dehumanization, alienation, and real-world endangerment of trans individuals. By sanctioning these slurs, FetLife actively promotes a hostile environment for a group of people that is already facing global existential threats. There can be no equality while slurs are openly used, protected, and promoted in a public setting. If the argument is to preserve the slur for the entire populace out of deference to a handful of trans individuals who want to keep the slur, I believe the cost of progress could be giving those slurs up. This may be a harder reality than remaining in the status quo for some. And that was one of my most, I think, important sentences in this whole thing. That may be the cost of progress, is giving up your slurs. This idea that, oh no, we have to keep them so that they can debase us with them. It's like, no. Sorry. I don't know, maybe after a cooling off period of, it's policing language. We already do that. We already do that. With people we consider human, God, some of these arguments to keep the slur just are so bad faith and just sickening to me. And I honestly have not had a good one. I have not had a good one. Especially not one made by a trans individual. They're all made by cisgender men, 50 plus typically. That's what I've seen. Just an observation. It's weird too. But yes, if any trans individuals have some really compelling arguments as to why we need to keep the slur for everybody to continue to be debased with it, I would love to have an open forum or Socratic dialogue with you over it, because I am profoundly interested to discover the truth of that matter. And the only way we're going to do that is by talking about it. So anyway, yeah, that I wanted to focus on that sentence. Continuing, when you allow groups using the T slur, and I would argue the S slur should be included in this protest as well, you're not being neutral. You are actively facilitating a space where trans bodies are treated as fetishized objects rather than human beings. This language leads to dehumanization, which leads to violence. It does. It does. It so much does. And that's, and then here's the section on the art protest side of this. This was a two-sided thing. There was the writing, and then there was the censoring my own art. So subverting my own image. In protest, I have begun uploading my photography, having been defiled with these group names plastered over them. The audience must be forced to confront what I and other trans individuals are forced to confront. If FetLife insists those words are acceptable, then you must accept that they are the most important parts of me and therefore what you should see. I'm disrupting the consumption of my art with the very language FetLife refuses to moderate. Ultimatum. Let's see. March 31st, 2026. Trans Day of Visibility. By this date, I expect a formal statement and the beginning of a policy rollout that restricts the use of the T slur in community-facing titles and metadata. And by November 20th, 2026, Trans Day of Remembrance, if these changes have not been fully implemented by this date, I will permanently delete my FetLife profile. I refuse to lend my artistic and personal value to a website that considers my identity a slur. Please join me in censoring images of your body or in other forms of protest. We will never be equal as so long as the use of slurs against us is institutionally accepted. They put a community note saying, using the T word in a hateful context goes against FetLife's guidelines. When reported, we act on it, and the person who used the term in a hateful way gets an automatic timeout. When a trans person uses the T word to refer to themselves, we do not act on it. We do not believe it's our place to tell a trans person what word they can or cannot use when referring to themselves. that was the community note they placed. And like, the response I typed shortly below my signature was, the community note below me ignores the reality of who curates these groups. It's cis men almost entirely. And like, look at the content of them. They simply ignored me, so yeah, ignores the reality of who curates these groups. It also shifts the blame to trans people. And again, repeating my call, if the cost of progress is everybody giving up the T-slur, then so be it. If that's the ultimate, if that's our two options, get rid of it. Treat it, put it on par with the N-word. Get it out of public-facing groups, society like that. Like, I don't know. And then there's, of course, that conflation of like, oh, well, cross-dressers get to use it. No. But that is kind of the stance, and that conflation in and of itself denies the truth of our identity. It's the whole thing, just sickens me. But anyway, I posted that. I started posting art with, me censored and stuff. I got fired up, the writing got a lot of attention that day, until they kind of nuked it. After they placed a community note, they started restricting, like they just shut up me essentially. And like, people weren't seeing my stuff. And like, I was, you look at the views on what I was getting then versus what I was suddenly getting, you could tell like something had been done to my account. My Instagram got deleted too. There were some people who were very angry at what I did. And they were in the comments just trying to sit there and defend, and tell everybody, and the cis men too, telling the trans people why that's a bad idea. Like they felt like it was their place to come in and talk, you know what I mean? And like, there was a lot of comments and debate. I mean, the writing still exists, and but you can't search it. You have to go directly to my profile to even find it. They made sure they wanted to bury that thing, dump sand on it, right? They never responded to a single email from me. Like I sent message support, just kind of being like, look, something's wrong with my account. Can you tell me why suddenly, like out of 5,000 followers, like, somebody, sit there and super love one of my images, and like, you can tell from the views, like nobody saw it. Like, it was frustrating on a level, that was hard for me in the moment. And then losing Instagram is like, which was probably my second, and it's mostly just art gallery, you know what I mean? That's just art gallery, but still, it'd been going on for a while. And, I had a lot of, and honestly, I enjoyed the algorithm that I'd built, all the dumb stuff I'd had on there and stuff, a lot of dumb stuff on there. Like, but, so it was more surprising, I think, than I, his like boyfriend asked me like after it happened, he was like, well, what did you think was gonna happen? Like, I was like, not that. And having my like kind of voice taken away, and like my ability to be seen, with my art and everything suddenly. And like, honestly, I mean, it was like, if they're not gonna change it or do anything, like I'm not gonna sit there and like, give them all my stuff. Like the idea felt bad of just like, this place considers me like a dog, basically. You know what I mean? Go make art, stupid. Like, we won't even, you're not even a premium user because you don't support us. You just upload all your content on here for free, your videos and your stuff, but you don't support us. You know what I mean? Like, that life is actually really kind of like gross when you think about it. It's very exploitative. In nature. And the fact that you can upload 100 videos and like, if you log into your alternative account, you can't watch a single one, or like, it's like you, if you're not a premium user, you can't even watch you can watch your own videos, but it's like, that idea of like, it's like, I guess, I'm like, oh, I have no partnership program, but honestly, they rely on free content. I mean, that's what most people are there for, is the free pictures and stuff. And it's like, they found a way to get people to do it for free. Like, rats off to you on that one. But, I just, Yeah, so it thus, end of an era in a lot of ways. A lot of things changed like suddenly overnight. Again, it was this profound moment of Kairos. And I described it to one guy one of my friends, who kind of remarked on the whole thing after he saw it all go down. Yeah, next day he was just like, wow, that was, well, because, okay, so that night, it was late that night, I think, when I was like sitting there kind of chewing on the whole thing in bed. And I think I was about to, no, it was the next morning. I checked my messages and it was in the request thing. It wasn't in my inbox. And I just happened to look, and somebody who was, following the whole thing, a trans girl, was like, hey, if you try searching the T slur, nothing comes up. I think they changed something. And I was like, jaw drop waking up in the morning, and I went and tried searching for the T slur in the search bar, and it didn't bring anything up. Which immediately I raced to look at the groups. The groups all still exist. Everything's still there. They just made the term, as well as the S slur, unsearchable. Um, so that was a big deal. And I tried to post about it. Yeah, of course, like it's like my hardly anybody saw it. I mean, I don't know. But it's just I actually got them to change something. Even though I kind of had to like burn my whole thing down to get it. But at the same time, they didn't do at all what I wanted. All those groups are still up, and you can still find them. And like you can still, if you just type in most of the letters of the word, you can still get the results. But honestly, that is going to make it that much harder for trans girls and like chasers to connect. That one little thing. And this idea that I left my mark on FetLife's code. You know what I mean? Like I'm inside their code now forever. That's kind of a nice thought too. Um, so that all, like, I burned basically my whole brand down, my whole Linzy19 brand and reputation. I had sponsors. I had a new rope sponsor too, Shashinsha, and like, he hasn't said anything, but like, surely he had to see the whole thing go down. I was just, I expect, I just gotten rope from him too, and I made some photos and stuff, but I was just like, oh god, I hope he's not looking, because it's like I could not do it, but at the same time, I was like, I was pictured in my head, he's coming over to be like, hey, how's it going? And I'm like covered in blood. There's like a battlefield going on. I was like, hey, how's it going? Like, oh, the rope's great. Yeah, I got some great photos coming. I'm just like, all right, I got a little busy here. I'll be back. And he's just like, but he didn't really say anything. I think he's still cool with me. I don't know. But like, yeah, I mean, I some wanted shop with some other guys, I don't know how much they saw, but I don't think I was unreasonable. But the art protest, I put a lot of my art up with those images censored, and I think that was one of the strongest points of that entire thing, was that those images were jarring. And I had to pollute my own images with them, and that was hard, it was really hard. Um, but I, again, like, and then when they actually did something, it's the bare minimum. Um, but at least I knew I'd been heard, and that I had left my mark. And at least, my more important thing is I hope that I inspired. And the death of Socrates is a big deal to me. I was like, in a lot of ways, I'm not gonna like make a new account or try to subvert this, or you know what I mean. I'm gonna let them kill me. That's what they want to do. You want to shadow ban my account and fucking quell me and shut me up because I spoke truth to you. Then do it. Let it be an example. Then it's like, oh, you remember Lindsay? There's I'm like, well, certainly some people enjoy my art. Like there's gonna it's like, yeah, this idea that there used to be this really interesting, like, I mean, I have an auteurs aesthetic to a lot of my images. Like these images, my images typically don't look like any other images you'll see. There's a certain like signature look to them, I feel. A certain way I edit and show, and the way I photograph myself, and the kind of stuff I do. Um, But like all that's gone because they couldn't sit down and have a conversation. They couldn't be bothered to be brought to the table because that's what this whole thing was meant to be, an open dialogue. But they didn't want to sit down and talk because we're just Teaslers. That's the message they sent, and that's the message I got. So, but I did, I mean, in addition to the groups, they have over like 600 fetishes listed on that site using those two slurs, just those two slurs. 600, 600. So right now I'm gathering them up in my profile, horrifyingly. And I've been doing it ever since I got shadow banned. I've just been going in there when I have the mental fortitude and just go to whatever page I'm on of whatever slur in the fetish list, and I just add them all. It's like I've basically, stripped down my profile a little bit because it's dead. The whole brand, Linzy19, is dead. And yeah, it's true. But yeah, I'm gathering them up. And then again, I will make another call on the 31st on the day of visibility. I will make another call. I will actually say, look, I've done your job for you. I went ahead and gathered them up for you. Every single one. All the groups I'm a member of all the groups that I want addressed. And I have every single fetish that I want removed from this site on my profile. Go take care of it. That's what I'm gonna tell them. I'm gonna make one last call. I'm gonna post maybe one more image censored. Oh, I'm not gonna censor it the same way. I'll probably take that entire list of 600 fetishes and like kind of like make them like a little transparent and lay them over the image, just so everybody can see how much there is. Because like if you go to my profile and look at my fetishes list, like it's already right there. Like I haven't gathered them all up yet. But it's appalling, and it has no place. FetLife is what do I call them? A cultural curator. That's what they are. Whether they like it or not, get with it, FetLife. You're a cultural curator. Act right. Do the right thing. That's my attitude on it, and I'm gonna give them one more chance. Say, look, I've gone out and done the homework for you. This is the Trans Day of Visibility, a day you pretend to recognize on the site when I'm sitting here shadow banned. We'll make one last, um, you know, careless or not, like I'm gonna make one last attempt. I expect them to, I either expect it to be, worse shot. I was like, I probably won't, nobody will see it, more than likely. Or they'll just ignore me again. And then I will delete my profile on November 20th. Or I may just like go through methodically and delete all like 2,000 images. Leave the protest ones, and remove everything else and migrate it to my personal site, and then just leave it. Just leave it as a monument, to what happens, to the whole thing. Because they probably hate that more than me deleting it. Get rid of it. They would love that. But no, if you're gonna chase out some of your artists and your most vulnerable population, because you want to take a stance on a slur, on keeping it so we can continue to be dehumanized and degraded with it. You had a chance to be and I tried to tell another trans creator friend of mine, I was like, if we don't do this now, it'll be another 10 years that somebody else will be doing this. Like, come on. Like and I think that was one of the things that was frustrating to me is the community support just wasn't really there. Like, it was a fun thing for everybody to like engage with for a day. And I know there's a lot of offline chatter about it too, but like, of all the other voices that I know that actually, are trans creator voices, none of them wanted to say anything. And definitely nobody wanted to call out what had happened to me, and I felt a lot of that, frustrating on a few levels. But that's essentially the long and short of it. I could not do it. I did it, and then I was like, oh god, I lost my little platform, but you know, boyfriend not long after the dust had settled he was like, well, I guess this really is death of Linzy19. Like, have you thought about rebranding? And I was like, no, like just when I thought about, just I got and people know who I am, not just as like a creator, but like as a, as an advocate for, trans rights and stuff. I was like, I can't just like make it, make me hard to find suddenly. Uh, but like 20 minutes after we got off the phone, I was sitting there like, Miranda Flowers. I like that. Well, even before I decided on name, I started to chew on the idea of a rebrand more and more. I was like, getting some of the baggage of the past, some of these associations with these emotional versions of myself, and some of these less in control versions of myself. Yeah, it does sound kind of nice, because I had changed. My photography changed a lot. I had changed a lot. And Miranda was a name that I always loved. It was probably the third choice of like my names when it came to like picking two names when I transitioned. I was just, I love that one, but I already knew my first and middle name, so But the idea that I could potentially go by it and be known by that going forward and kind of have a new, fresh start at everything, was suddenly became very attractive to me. Miranda Flowers came up because I adored the name Miranda, but it's a reference to Elden Ring and the Miranda blooms, those poisonous carnivorous plants. And God, do I not have a thing for carnivorous plants and just tropicals in general, like in Elden Ring, I adored those enemies, and I think the lore I don't think was developed quite enough, but I think they're fascinating creatures. Like I love them. But this idea that like, and I was doing this, different phase of like, I identified with ghosts for a long time. And then there was an idea that, I had an again walker, this idea of a revenant. Now I have a body. I've been seen there. There was a particular instance after one of those like one night stands that I was walking back to my car through a bad neighborhood. And this old Hispanic guy pulled his truck over, and like I was actually a little nervous. I was just like, oh god, it's early morning, like I'm walking, like I'm exposed, vulnerable, like I look like shit. I look like I just had a one night stand and now I'm walking to my car by myself. You can tell how good this thing went. And he pulled over and rolled down his window, and he gave me some crackers and some snacks and some beef jerky. And like, he just like he didn't. You could tell he didn't really. I don't think he spoke much English, but he was just like, gave me the 2 packets of like crackers and peanut butter crackers, and I was just, and I'm so food averse, and like honestly, I wasn't about to eat them, especially not with water, but like there was just he saw me, and I think that was an important moment for me where I no longer felt like a ghost, and here I was engaging with my body and having these like, a couple of like little hookups and stuff, and like, and that was a big deal for me. Yeah, I lost my virginity. I lost my virginity for my boyfriend. It was perfect, and I knew after I lost it with somebody the way I wanted to, I would probably want to explore a little bit more. And boyfriend was super supportive of me adventuring like this too. But I remember I did barely slept. I looked like shit, and like he gave me that food, and he just drove off, and I continued to walk back. And I remember I hung out on that food for several days before I finally like sat and ate it. And like, just that idea though that like, yeah, all he saw was a tired, exhausted girl who probably just had a bad night. You know what I mean? But he saw me. Yeah. So it's like I couldn't call myself a ghost anymore. And so I started engaging with this idea of being a revenant and having this body now, and being this thing that used to be a ghost, but now is able to be seen. I had this boyfriend who sees all these things of my needs and like understands them and doesn't make me feel bad for them. And like, he sees me. I'm real to him. You know. And so I kind of ditched the ghost thing for the Revenant thing, but then this felt like, and the Revenant in a lot of ways felt like a little kamikaze drone or something. It's like or it felt like a weapons, that movie Weapon. It's like in some ways, like, yeah, once I was given like, a target, and the thing was, I think I looked at them holding that slur in a protected status as kind of like the source of a lot of the like exclusion, alienation, and fetishization that I was facing out here in the real world. And like I started to look at them as that's a problem. You can't find like a partner around here or a tying partner around here. Or anybody will just treat you normal around here. You know? So frustrating. You know. And I'm not saying that it's, they definitely they're culpable. They're culpable. Um but so the Revenant was a weapon, and they killed it. Killed it dead. But from that, like, blood soaked soil, grew these Miranda flowers, is the way I kind of thought of it. And it's like, not just, people told me, like, I had other trans girls tell me, they were like, I see what happened to you, but like, your job is done. Like, well, I had one tell me, like, more than one, I think, tell me, like, we'll take it from here. And those were big moments for me where I thought about that. I was like, I achieved what I was hoping to. Anyway, I wanted to inspire, especially a lot of these younger ones who see us get pushed around and see us, get degraded so often as we do. I wanted them to see somebody, somebody else stand up and, just with clarity and be like, no, it's bullshit. You need to stop. Um, you know, hopefully there's an Aristotle out there. It's like, yeah. Or Plato. Um, but yeah, so hopefully I laid some tracks and somebody else will build a train station around it and make it all nice later. But anyway, it felt kind of, yeah, stepping away from all that, Instagram and felt life was kind of a thing. And so, yeah, it's an Elden Ring reference, Miranda Flowers, but it's also a Scott Pilgrim reference, some Ramona Flowers. And that felt good, and it felt like a proper name, especially if I was going to continue doing the kind of work I do and stuff. I felt I needed a proper like stage name and stuff, and that's first and last name. So it worked for me on multiple levels. Felt really good. I engaged with it. I went through the trouble of changing a lot of my handles, not all of them though. Some of them are too hard to change, and it's just a nightmare. But I knew it was going to be like that too. But I think it is honestly the best thing for me. I created a personal website, Miranda-flowers.com, and that's a place for me to it's kind of a replacement, honestly, for FetLife. It's just a place where I can be authentic. I'm going to migrate a lot of my content, like my writings and stuff, over. It's still in the building blocks. It's got a decent amount there, but it's still getting built up, and I still got new stuff that needs to go up, but I've got, obviously thousands of old things that need to go up and things to write, and like, it's a lot of work to be done, but I haven't built a website since I was like 14, and like, this is really nice. I like it. It's a good little hobby for me. So that happened. More stuff happened between now and then. I got filmed in the locker room at like a big chain gym recently, and then the person's like uncle posted to Facebook, calling me man and stuff. Like, wow. And that was a big deal that I'm still emotionally processing. I don't even have Facebook. Somebody like sent me screenshots of like, they filmed me like while I was like getting undressed, and like, I don't know how much they filmed. Person said it was a 10-second video, but the police report, you know what I mean? Like, the detective called me yesterday and like got more information. But like that whole thing's still developing, and I'm still kind of a mess over it. And, like, I haven't worked out in a couple weeks. I just go to the gym so much. And that's like, coming to terms with a lot of my mental health nuances has been a big part of my journey and my relationship with my boyfriend in particular. I am on the AU spectrum, and that's something, coming to terms with that has been a big deal. And it's helped me decode a lot of my life and understand a lot of my behaviors and the way I work and what I need a lot of the times and why I get the way I do sometimes. And my ADHD, recognizing that, getting that under control has been a big deal. But it's still, being medicated doesn't make it all better. It just presents other challenges. But it is good. HSP, like highly sensitive person, like I definitely have like I process like intensely. And that's something I've always done, but I think having a word and like, and these are things I don't consider these things disorders, not even the next thing that I'm about to mention, but like there's just ways that people are. There are ways that the brain like turns out, usually from like trauma and like um environmental, things. I mean, even trans and stuff. But like borderline personality disorder, like that's something, I'm not officially diagnosed, but you know, I fit the bill, and looking at myself and my behavior and my tendencies under that lens is actually, I feel, done a lot of good in helping me and my boyfriend navigate what's going on sometimes. The way I can get triggered on like something simple, like a social thing, and it'll send me into a little spiral, and these fits and how long they last and the rhythm of them. Like these are things that we have come to recognize and you know like really work well with, and I think that's one reason he's so good for me, is that he understands a lot of this, and he'll give me some grace in times when I have fits and everything, and like um some of these ways I find and a lot of this is, I think, they don't mask around him, and I think that's one of the things. Like I mask, I performed life so much, that like I think when I don't, I'm surprised at what comes out sometimes, but it's just me being like, it's just me breathing freely when I'm with him. And and I still have abandonment issues and stuff, and sometimes we'll have an issue and I'll immediately think, oh god, we're gonna break up. And that's one thing I think about, is like like he's like, that part of me will go away if I'm not with him, because like he's the only person I really know that I can really let myself out with and just be, and again, just breathe. Just let my conscious and my personality breathe. Like, and I'm I'm manic melancholy, that can be how it is. Um but coming to terms with a lot of that has been immensely, I think, empowering for me in my way forward. You know, like, and still staying away from partnered rope. And like just recognizing myself as a solo artist, and like living with that truth, and maybe just, and not blaming myself so hard for like, oh, you need aftercare, you need all this stuff, and you have all these eccentricities and nuances. Like, I'm a hummingbird. You can't get mad at a hummingbird because you're throwing birdseed at it. It won't eat it. You know what I mean? Like, and I try to think of myself in these ways. Like, I have these things, like, these challenges and mental health nuances and stuff. They don't make me bad. They just make me a hummingbird. Um, and somebody needs to learn how to give me nectar and what that looks like, and if they don't care to bother with it, or one of these diva plants, if I give you my Thai constellation, are you going to get mad at it because you overwatered it or underwatered it, because it wasn't in the perfect spot for the sun, because it has those white spots and it needs to be able to photosynthesize as much as possible? Like, no, you just accommodate it and it flourishes. Don't sit here and try to force it in these weird boxes. And that's what I'm trying to come to with myself. This understanding that, like, I may not have a lot of partners that I tie with or have connections with. And the photos I see of people doing partner rope, it could never be me. Might never be me. But, when I'm with my boyfriend, like, we play with the kind of bondage that, he's a specialist in. And he'll do some of that vet wrap stuff on me, and that can feel like getting tied up. But I will self tie, honestly. Like, I'll hog tie myself, and he'll take my hands off or something and play with me. And like, honestly, it's great. Like, I really don't have a massive problem sitting in my own super comfortable rope that I love doing and being played with. That's actually works for me pretty good. Um, you know, um, Now we both, he and I both know I would adore like a rope relationship with somebody, but like, I just don't know, I'd have to have a deeper connection with somebody who wants to help navigate a hummingbird or Thai constellation, but that's, yeah. So that's what I'm trying to say with that. And I'm trying to, I made a new, like a Miranda Flowers Instagram. It's like at Miranda Flowers IG. But I made a new one, and I'm kind of posting like my best art and like a lot of some of my older stuff, some of my newer stuff. But I want it to kind of just serve as a good like look at me as an artist, and just how I've matured and where my art is now and stuff. Keep it a little bit. It's the vibe's different and stuff. Um, I moved away a little bit from Reddit. I really only post my profile there now. I get my feelings from the Shibari subreddit too. I get my feelings hurt anywhere there's partnered rope. My rope group. I've right now I've stepped away from it. And it's safe. Like and that honestly that's one of the reasons I did step away. Is because I knew I could. So I gave it to Ellie. And I told her she could give it back to me when I came back. And honestly, like, I know it's safe. And that's one of the only reasons I was able to do it, and I chose to do it, is because um and it's like she's not the only one who's going to keep it safe. There's enough people there who are committed to that garden. It's now called the Miranda Garden, but and it's like there's enough people who I staunchly believe are committed enough to where it's going to maintain itself while I collect myself. I've long had a complicated relationship with it, but some like something had happened in there recently that was going to make me, compelled me to want to delete a certain section. And I was like, the second, like, I was already dysregulated a little bit by it. And then I was like, the second you start deleting stuff, it's like, you need to step away. It's like protect it from yourself. It wasn't necessarily that. It's just, I knew I needed to limit the amount of dysregulation potentials around me and in my life. And part of the frustrating thing is the money has been so bad, and that was one thing I never mentioned. I had to start a GoFundMe because things were like so rough, which I still haven't met the goal, so I'll leave the link in the comments if you want to donate. But I can't afford to teach the rope because it's like I can't take the time to do it. Any free time I have needs to be devoted to being a cam girl. It's I can't. I gotta work, and it's like there's been this whole debate about, do I go back to regular work? Is that going to be worth my time? Like, what kind of work would you do? Like, um, but it's frustrating when like I actually have 10 new classes I want to do, but like I can't schedule them, and it's like I don't have Fat Life to promote them really anymore either, but which is fine. Like the group is fine at the number it is, as long as people are showing up to the things or watching the videos. But the fact that I just feel like I can't engage with it the way I want to, it's really frustrating. And I have like AU issues, I think, with feeling like alienated in spaces, especially spaces that I've created. Like I don't, this is not the first community I've like made, and in some case, I'm not walking away from this community at all. Rope is too embedded in who I am, and I'm a teacher, and that garden is exactly what I want. Like I need it, honestly. Like I need a space to share what I've learned, and to like, not just the good stuff, but the bad stuff too. Um, you know, and I like to teach, and I like it when people get it, and I like that they grow from these things. Like the response to the rope classes was a bigger deal to me, and I think a bigger response than I was expecting. So it is a very big part of me, and it's really important to me. But I do have an issue with feeling, I think, alienated in my own spaces or in spaces that I get involved with, and then I have this tendency to want to pull away. I mean, obviously, I've talked about that before, I think. But this I do believe is different. I won't let that pattern repeat itself. It's all too important. And I think the real reason I stepped away was to preserve that peace, And again, I know it's safe. If I was in doubt about what was going to happen to it if I walked away, I probably wouldn't have done it. But it's safe. And speaking of, one thing, so I injured myself somehow doing rope or something. I think it was, so my suspect was a hoist that I did months ago, where I did a self hoisted gura where I hoisted my entire body weight up. But I flubbed the lock off. So I held my entire body weight with my other hand, my left hand, tried to lock off, couldn't get it again. And so I was like, again, strong, dominant hand, grabbed it, tried it again, got it. The whole lift ended up being bad. It was just glorified waist rope. And so I didn't, I got like one crappy picture. And like, yeah, so pretty much immediately came down. And I was up late, the whole thing was a bad vibe, but my arms had never been that tired in my life after that whole experience. Like, I remember when I got down, I just let them lay out to my sides and just the blood come back, not come back to them. I mean, they were, and I remember thinking like I was just this mindset of, I can do this. My body is strong, I'm strong, and like I'm determined, and failure is not an option. And yeah, that feeling in my arms after I came down, them being so spent, I'd never really had that feeling before, and I was scared. I was like, the next day you're gonna wake up, and your arms are gonna be like on fire, or they're gonna be stiff or something. And no, they were fine. They were fine. It wasn't until like a month and a half later that I started to just get agitation when I was using a mouse. Um, and and then I started to get like tingling and like these two fingers and maybe like this one occasionally. And it just felt like, oh, God, I just needed to stretch or something, just something like, yeah, so I eventually kind of came to conclusion that I must have, done something, pinched a nerve or done something that, was traveling up, the arm. Eventually, at first I was like, it's tense elbow, it's not, and like trying to, feel things out and trace it around, pinpoint exactly. It seems like this part of my shoulder, like right in here, there's like a hot spot in there. But I think it's more of a neck thing, honestly. I think, like just the strain of the muscles and the neck and the shoulders, I think it's all related. But doing nerve gliding exercises over time helped. Doing some stretches helped. It's not nearly as bad now. Like, but it's still kind of something I worry about, and I don't think I'm fully recovered from it. I modified my chest harness design to kind of pull the shoulder straps away from the neckline a little bit to see if that helps, to more mimic like a butterfly harness. Um, but injury was really difficult to kind of come to terms with and stuff. And it still is. I'm still working through it kind of. But I did a lift, a suspension like the other day, and kind of pulled something in my other side, on my left side. And nothing at all like similar, but like, and I've been sitting, when you sit with bad posture for like a couple days straight, maybe like playing an intense video game or something, like, and with bad posture, and then you end up paying for it like a week later, like you move a certain way and like your whole back like is like all locked up or something. Like, I was on this stupid fucking beanbag playing Minecraft with my boyfriend for like a couple days, a couple nights in a row, and I was half bent up on my left side. I remember like feeling like, a little tightness back there and being like, oh, you keep sitting like this, you're gonna, you're gonna pay for that. But, didn't really bother me. I tested out that chest harness the other day, did a suspension. And when I grabbed the two lines, because I have four lines that I use down here, but I usually only snag two when I jump around the back and snag them, which I need to start snagging all four lines. But I went to snag two and I missed one of the sets, and I only snagged one set, and I didn't notice that until I looked at the pictures because I thought I got them both. So when you look at the pictures, there's a line of two lines of rope over one of the lines of rope, from here. And I think that might have been creating a pressure point there. that was, and maybe on the top of that part was already inflamed. Because like for the last like however many days since then, I was like, oh, if I move a certain way or I like, I was like, oh, and it doesn't feel like the nerve thing or anything. It just feels more like gamer posture mixed with like, uh-oh, I bent out one-handed. And I mean that I remember that happened one time when I was doing pest control and I like picked up a gallon thing out of the back of the truck. My body's remembering it right now. I could feel a twinge. But I went like this and picked up that gallon thing and doing like that, like, ooh, that whole like neck thing got pulled. It's like and I think that's just from, years of RSI and bad posture, mouse stuff. And that's honestly the reason I got rid of that computer chair and I don't cam from it anymore. And that's disrupted my workflow too. And like, and that was a big disruption in my workflow in general, is just not being able to comfortably do a mouse. It took me a while to figure out how to like do it better and more ergonomically. And like, honestly, it looks like I'm sitting on a beanbag. I'm actually not. I'm actually sitting on a number of ergonomic things. So what have we got here? Let's see. We've got like a vintage bleacher seat. We've got like a yoga block. We've got this like blow up thingy here. So we've got a lot of support. We got this pillow and we got the back thing from the bleacher seat. So it's like, honestly, I'm learning it's, a lot of this is hip things, I think, and it's from years of sitting on that chair the wrong way. So I'm having, I'm not happy with my body right now. As far as like what's going on with that and my physical prowess, but I need to get back into like hacky sack and stuff. Imagine this, I'm really good at playing hacky sack by myself. It's things by myself. But yeah, and that's kind of where I guess I could leave it on. It's just coming, that's where I am now, is just kind of coming to terms living as a solo artist, like, that's really the name of the game at this point. It's like, I'm not, I can't really hold out hope for somebody, Prince Charming or whoever to show up, Prince Rigger Charming to show up and be like, hi, I do rope and I'm emotionally available. It's like, I don't even need like, that's, I have a boyfriend with all those needs right there. I don't really even need like a big relationship. I just need somebody who can connect with me. Like, so we're doing rope and rope is intimate. And if you're not treating it intimate, like, I don't know, that whole like tie and fly culture, like, hey, let's do like this little tie together and then let's just not talk again after that. Or I don't know. The whole thing kind of gets me, and that's all me. I get that. It doesn't make me a bad person. It makes me hummingbird. But once I find somebody who's like, I'm a nectar flower, I'm going to drink that nectar. But it's like I really can't sit here and like try to like search and like, I don't really have the platform to search anymore. It's just I'm gonna have to wait until I just by chance meet somebody and either teach them to tie on me or hope that they are somewhere in their rope journey already. But so I guess that's where I can leave it. God, I need to leave it. This has been long. I needed to get this out. Part of me was like, do a two-parter. No, I just wanted to put this episode out and move on with my life and my day, and to come back in 8 months. That's not true. I wanna grab Ellie again and pull her in here and be like, we're gonna do this again. Say the pretty words again. Make me cry again. Like, yeah, it's like the tragedy of the oblivion of that interview. But at the same time, like I said, she's very special to me. And I think it was more important for us to have that conversation than it was to like get it on the record to show to people, we can still talk and do an episode. And I think then I'll have all my recording bearings down, and then maybe I can pull in other trans girls and trans people and be like, hi, tell me about all your kinky things. Which, by the way, if you wanna come on the show and talk to me about all your kinky things, send me an email. What's my email? Oh God, it's Miranda@miranda-flowers.com. No, Miranda-flowers.com. Yes. Miranda@Miranda-flowers. Yes, it's redundant. I know. I should put me. Like me with like 12 E's and just really make things hard. But no, if you want to be a guest on the show, let me know. Yeah, so I can get set up. Well, I swear to God, it's been 3 years in the making. One day there will be an interview with another person. I feel put together enough. I'm cooked. Yeah, I was like, I've cooked. I'm done transitioning. I'm done. My journeys I've put together. I know who I am. That's not true. Don't look at my Tamagotchi blanket. I identify as a Tamagotchi. I need constant praise, attention, and food, or I shit myself and die. There, I said it. It's true. So anyway, yeah, that's it. That's the whole episode. That is my 8-month catch up. I'm gonna stop talking. I'm so tired. I gotta go. Gotta get out of here. Personal website up, rope lessons up, GoFundMe is up. Anything sings. If you like my rope lessons, go watch them. Leave comments, like, and subscribe. Goodbye. I'm banging this phone. I know it's on TV. Wait, I don't have TV.